Okay, councillors, if you make a start, please. Okay. Evening all. I'm Councillor Paul Wilby, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. I take this opportunity to advise you that if there is a fire alarm, please stay in your seat, and members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? Councillor Cleater.
In honour of Councillor Mackay, I reserve my right.
Okay. I ask this. Does it yourself recording as well, Councillor Harper?
Just offering Councillor Cleater a camera so she could film the proceedings on behalf of Malcolm.
Okay. Okay, I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I'd also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by the way of the microphone and remind them to turn their microphones off when they have finished speaking. And members of the public and objectors and applicants, when you come forward, you have 3 minutes to speak. That would be nasty. I will cut you off at 3 minutes. That is the designated amount of time you have to speak. Moving on then, apologies. Item 1, are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Gooch, I believe there's probably a few stuck in traffic as well at the moment, so if they do turn up, that we'll wait till the end actually if they, to register if they don't completely turn up to the meeting. I believe we have some substitutes tonight. Councillor Harper.
Councillor Paul Harper for Faye Gooch.
Councillor Green and Councillor Jeffrey for items 15 and 17.
Councillor Oliver for Councillor Thompson for items 15 and 17.
Okay, thank you, councillors.
Sorry, Chairman, we'll also have Councillor Cooch and Councillor Summersgill for items 15 and 17.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay. Item 3, visiting members. I can't actually see one. Nope. Items withdrawn. There are no items recommended for withdrawals from the agenda tonight. Item 5, urgent items. I intend to take the written and verbal updates as the urgent items, as they contain further information relating to matters to be considered at the meeting. Is this agreed?
Can I just ask a question, Mr. Chair? Yeah, on the urgent update papers we've got, obviously a couple of ward councillors have asked questions. Would that presumably mean they've been predetermined? Because they're sending information into the committee. It's either presumably lobbying or predetermination. I'd just like a ruling on that, just so I'm clear.
No, you can ask questions in advance, Councillor Harper, as I believe you have in the past on previous committees. No, I mean when you're on the committee, and as long as the people come here with a open mind, that should be okay. Okay, moving on. Oh, sorry, is that agreed first of all? Thank you, councillors. Okay, moving on. Item 6, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? Nope. No one's on the parish one that's on tonight? Oh, okay. Moving on then. Disclosures of lobbying. I'll start from the left and work my way around. So some of you, Councillor Harper.
None, Mr. Chairman.
None.
None.
None for me either, Mr. Chairman.
No lobbying that I'm aware of at all.
No lobbying. Thank you. Item 18.
None.
None for me, thank you.
I can't recollect actually being lobbied on any either. Okay. Moving on. Item 8. I move that the items on the agenda be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Item 9, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of November 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 10, there are no petitions this evening. Item 11, I call upon Tony Ryan to go over the deferred items.
Thank you. Yeah, there were 5 cases on the deferred list for the November meeting. 3 of these are due to be decided this evening, and they are items 14, 18 and 19. The remaining 2 cases are due to be reported back in early 2026. And that is also the case with Hart Farm, which was also deferred at the November meeting. Thank you.
Okay. We move straight into it. Item 15, Cobham's Place, 5 Tunbridge Road. I call upon Richard Timms to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is an application for a non-material amendment to change the parking layout and to provide some external cycle parking in relation to an approved development for a 5-storey apartment block. The site is on the south side of Tunbridge Road, just as you're going up the hill from the river. And yeah, these plans are in your papers. So on the left is the approved parking layout at the back of the apartment block. And then on the right is what's now proposed. So as I say, it's basically changing the arrangement of the parking spaces, and that's mainly to accommodate this external parking, cycle parking area, and include 2 disabled parking bays. There'd also be a slight change to the access here, so the pavement doesn't splay in to the car park, and that means slightly larger landscaping areas here. And then internally to the building, a plant room would be replaced by a cycle store. So the only consideration for this type of application is whether the proposed changes are materially different or not the merits of them. And for the reasons set out in the report, we think the changes do not result in a materially different appearance to the development or have any materially different outward impacts. So permission is recommended. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Harper.
Doesn't have that one. Do I have to start again?
I mean, as I understand, the parking bays are the same and they meet the current standards, and the Highways Authority, although we don't have to consult them on these, we did, and they had no objections.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I just wondered, does Councillor Harwood need to declare an interest, or does he need to clarify his position on this and 17, given that the leader and the other cabinet member are not here and he is the cabinet member for planning?
Councillor Harwood, did you take part in any part of the?
I have never, to my knowledge, ever been in a meeting where this has been discussed or talked about it. So I'm not, it's not even a mate. So I know I don't have an interest. No.
Councillor Russell.
I just think it was worth the clarification as it is a Maidstone application. Thank you. And 17.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Anybody else? In that case, I'm going to move from the chair as per the papers. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harper. All in favour? Okay, and that is approved. Thank you, members. Moving on to item 17. This is also a Maidstone application. I call upon Sean Scott, the Principal Planning Officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So this item relates to a planning application for full planning permission at Foster Street in Maidstone. And the proposed development is for the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of 8 dwellings with associated parking, access and landscaping. So here is the site location plan. And here is a aerial view, giving a bit more context to the buildings around the site. This is the principal elevation. And here are some views of the street scene, noting to the west, block flats, and just to the east here, sorry, looking west here, we've got the MOT centre. So this is the proposed site layout. As you can see, there are a number of trees proposed to the front of the building, 4 in total, to the front of the buildings. The dwellings are arranged into 4 semi-detached pairs with bin stores to the front and in individual parking bays with private gardens to the rear. So here are the proposed floor plans. Over to the right here, you've got the arrangement of the 4-bed houses, which are arranged over 3 floors, and 3 beds here are over 2 floors, and there are solar panels on the roofs. Here's the proposed elevations. And then here are the street scenes, which show how the development will step down from the flats on one side to the MOT centre on the other. I've zoomed in a bit more here so you can see what that would look like. And this is the final slide, which shows a more detailed image of the facade. So there's an urgent update which relates to SUDS, which has now been resolved through the LLFA, and a condition recommended for a SUDS scheme. And therefore, the recommendation is to approve the application.
Okay, we have Mr. Thompson for the applicant.
Good evening, councillors. On behalf of the applicant, I fully endorse the officer's recommendation, which is to approve the application. The proposed development has been informed by 2 detailed pre-applications with the planning department. The pre-application feedback from the planning team made several design recommendations to the project team, which has been incorporated into the final proposal. The delivery of 8 homes falls below the council's affordable housing threshold, so there is no requirement for affordable homes as part of this development. However, it is expected that once permission is obtained, the applicant will apply for Homes England funding to deliver the dwellings as affordable homes, which will form part of the 1,000 council house building programme. The proposal represents a high quality scheme which will provide family houses of 3 and 4 bedrooms within the town centre. The proposal will incorporate a robust soft landscaping scheme, including the planting of small-leaved lime trees along the front of the homes. The proposal will result in an uplift of BNG well above the 20% policy requirement. There have been no objections to the scheme from statutory consultees, and the conditions put forward are accepted by the applicant. The parking quantum is supported by KCC Highways and promotes modal shift in the town centre. In summary, the proposal is in accordance with the council's local plan spatial strategy and delivers much needed family homes in a sustainable location, while significantly enhancing the character of the area. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Just before we continue, Councillor Harwood, can you just confirm you've not, as this is a council applicant?
I have not discussed any of these in the same way in a parish council. If you're not part of it, you know,
It's just due diligence, Councillor Harwood, just making sure. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on it? Councillor Harper.
I think this is, quite a good proposal going forward with our social housing policy, which is fully endorsed by the cabinet. And I'm sure they'll have discussed this in detail at their meetings, but anyway. It's good to see that we're having a mixture of 3 and 4 bedroomed houses, because most of the applications we tend to do are for flats. So this will at least give families some accommodation, which I think will be much needed in a central location. One thing I just wanted to check was, I think in terms of the trees being planted at the front, I think I read that we're looking at lime trees. Now, my only concern on that is that lime trees give off terrible sap, which, as everybody's got a car and parks under a lime tree will know. And given these lime trees are going to be overlooking where you're going to be parking your car, I wondered if we could look at another non-native species which would be applicable for the area, but wouldn't give off that sort of sap.
So just, you said non-native, you mean native species?
Sorry, I meant native, yeah, an alternative native tree which won't give off the sap, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Cleater and Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, as someone who used to have to drive regularly from the TGU to take people to the Foster Street Clinic, this is going to be a massive improvement to the area, to be quite honest. It's desperate that we get that Homes England funding, quite right, because 3 and 4 bedroom homes are what's needed for social housing. So on that basis, I'm happy to support, and I will defer to Councillor Harper and Councillor Harwood on what trees go where, seeing as I was brought up in a concrete jungle.
Councillor Harwood.
right. Small Eve Lime, Tilia cordata, does not have honeydew dripping off it from the greenfly. The trees that do is the intermediate between Tilia platyphyllos and Tilia cordata, the large leaf and the small leaf. It was planted by a lot of Victorian and Edwardian plantsmen because it's very tough and very quick growing. The cultivars now, I mean, small leaf lime doesn't have honeydew anyway, but the cultivars they use, things like Streetwise and so on, are in every street in every town, and they don't drop sugary water onto your car.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harwood. Are you happy with that, Councillor Harper?
I'll accept that. Yeah, it seems fairly thorough, as one would expect from Tony.
I also just have to clarify, Councillor Cleater, that we're not allowed to put any weight. I know the applicant mentioned about applying for grant funding from Homes England, but we're not allowed to attach any weight to that. Okay. All right. Again, it seems we have a positive discussion. Again, I'll move from the chair. The recommendations on the papers. Councillor Harper, thank you for seconding. And the urgent update to be taken into account. Okay, all in favour? Unanimous again. Unanimous, and that is approved. Okay, moving on then. Oh, sorry, I've got a few shifting around. So, Councillor Russell, while we're waiting, do we have an update on Councillor Perry? Is he en route, or? I just obviously I know the issue with the lift and all that. So, okay. Okay. Thank you, councillors, for joining us. Just so we can run through a few things straight away. Councillor Thompson, Jeffries and Summersgill, any disclosures of any disclosures of lobbying?
Yes, I've been lobbied on item 16.
I've been lobbied on item 18. And I have not been lobbied, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Okay, moving on then. Item 16. I call upon Shaw Scott to introduce the item, Beacon Park, Land North Heath Road, Coxey.
Thank you, Chair. So this is I've prepared a supplementary report following the Planning Committee resolution to approve on the 21st of August. The report presented in August included a Section 106 head of term to secure a total of 875,000 towards education. This would have included a mechanism so that any education funded through receipts would be discounted from the applicant's agreed financial contribution. Since the Planning Committee, work has commenced on the drafting of the Section 106 agreement. And during this time, the applicant has reconsidered their position and withdraws their agreement to the education contribution, noting that this was originally requested by KCC. One of the reasons for withdrawing the offer, which officers also recognise, is that the council has collected a significant SIL funds since 2018 and hasn't had the opportunity to allocate these to education, including transferring funds to KCC for education provision. So since the application was presented to this committee, this reasoning has been recognised in other planning decisions. And it is the case that SIL is seen as the primary mechanism for securing off-site infrastructure, such as education. As such, the withdrawal of the head of term for education contributions is not considered to be grounds for refusal in this instance. I highlight that the developer will be required to pay SIL for the market housing within this development, and this could be used towards education. Finally, some requests were made by members in the August committee to amend heads of terms and conditions. I highlight that these have been incorporated into the Section 106 and the conditions outlined in the supplementary report under 3.09. Therefore, the recommendation is to approve the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Weaver, Coxheath Parish Council.
Good evening. My name is Heather Weaver. I represent Coxheath Parish Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. In terms of the educational contribution being part of the community infrastructure levy, we don't have any objections to that. I think that's reasonable. I would just like to highlight some other changes that the Planning Committee asked for in August regarding some of the heads of terms and conditions, particularly the one around the upgrade to a crossing, which, as I said in August, doesn't actually exist at the moment. I do find the language isn't actually explicit to say there is no crossing to upgrade at the moment. We really would like a crossing as urgently as possible. Since the doctor's surgery moved to the Greensand site, Coxheath residents, in order to access that by pedestrian, by walking, you can only walk all the way to Linton Crossroads along the north side of the Heath Road. You can't walk along the south side. So if you're walking, you've got to go all the way along on the north side and then somehow cross a road, which is currently speed limit of 40 miles an hour. There's no crossing on the road. So I did wonder whether it would be possible to have the summary report, which I've read, clarified to just acknowledge the fact that that crossing doesn't actually exist anymore at the moment, and we would like it as urgently as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Osborne for the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council and officers. I don't have anything further to add in regard to the Section 106 agreement. I think that's been fully explained, and I believe that members understand that matter. In regard to the tweaks to heads of terms for the agreement, there's only one point that has come up, and that, to my mind, and that is in regard to the positioning of 30-mile-an-hour repeater signs and the 30-mile-an-hour extension through to Linton Crossroads. I was on the understanding that that had already been included as part of the Green Sand Place scheme. And if the council feels that that does need doubling up and including in both Section 106 agreements, fine, but I believe it's being delivered as part of the Green Sand Place scheme. And in regard to the comment from Coxheath Parish Council in regard to the crossing, we fully support the crossing, and we are, as part of the Beacon Park scheme, upgrading the crossing from the zebra to a toucan. Pelican, I beg your pardon. And I understand that there's concern because there has been an application lodged to vary the Green Sand Place scheme for the zebra crossing. And I just want to inform members that we are in discussions with the developers of Green Sand Place and seeking to provide them with a license to widen the footpath on our side of the road so that that zebra crossing can be installed while they're doing their groundworks during this coming 6 months. And provided that all of that gets dealt with, I understand that they are going to vary their Section 73 application so that the removal of the zebra, or the requirement of the zebra crossing, is actually removed from that application, and they will still go ahead and install it. And I believe officers are aware of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And before I go to members, I could just clarify a few of those issues that were raised by the Coxheath Parish Council and the applicant.
Yep, I just would like to draw your attention to condition 21, which is a Grampian condition requiring the delivery of a crossing. So I've got nothing more to say on it other than that, really.
Just a question for me. It's mentioned about the seal payments, and probably it's not a question that you can answer. But is there a reason why the seal money has ever been applied for by KCC?
I think we've only had one seal bidding round, haven't we? And I think there was a bid put in towards education. I can't recall what it was, but yeah, we can't speak on behalf of whether KCC do or do not put bids in.
Okay, Councillor Harper, then Councillor Russell, then Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair. I just was quickly, while the report's been introduced, looked up. The council's strategic seal pot at the moment sits at just under £3.3 million. Now, I don't know how much seal this development, I couldn't quite see it, was going to contribute. But I think, as you just asked, we know that Kent County Council hasn't bid for any seal towards any educational projects in Maidstone unless they're doing it in the current round, which I think is out there at the moment. But it's a shame that, you know, the Section 106 isn't proceeding, because obviously if you needed almost £900,000 just to support this in terms of that, given the council's only got £3.3 million to support every infrastructure proposal in the borough, there's not going to be the money to provide the education facilities linked to the population, which will be, you know, with this, which is obviously unfortunate, but it's where we are. But I suppose it comes up, to me, it points out from when we were doing an overview and scrutiny, the SIL review, that we recommended that for larger schemes, we should be looking at reinstituting Section 106 as the prime source of funding, and then using SIL for the smaller schemes because of the problems we get, which this really just is the classic example of. If we'd have had Section 106, we probably would have got the money to do the works needed and infrastructure. under Sill, it's unlikely they're going to happen, given, as I say, we've only got £3.3 million to deal with the whole borough and all the infrastructure needs of the whole of Maidstone. So that's just really just a point.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I agree with you. Obviously, the applicant is only playing within the rules that we provided him to go with it. But I do agree with you. I think when Councillor Burton was still on the thing, there was a big debate about Seal when we just chose to go to Seal. I'm also aware that we probably got one of the lowest Seal rates in Kent at the moment as well. So that's probably not helping our case, but I do agree with that. And I'm sure the Cabinet member is aware of those kind of issues. Councillor Russell.
Declare an interest in that I'm a Kent County councillor and I sit on the Committee for Children, Young People and Education. But the problem with this is that there is actually, it's a phasing issue. If you expand a school, you have a direct impact on some of the other catchments if it's not warranted by the amount of pupils. So they do all of their placement on the Kent Commissioning Plan, which has actually just been published for this year, but the catchments are shrinking. So Cornwallis catchment used to go all the way down and include some of Marden. It now really just ends at Linton Hill. So you can see when they start to shrink that they are reaching capacity of numbers. So when we're saying that that authority hasn't drawn some of this money, it's a phasing issue in some respects. So I know that the applicants use that as a reason they've collected significant funds and they've had plenty of opportunities to allocate these and spend them. But just if they spend them, it then does have an impact on all of the catchment. And we have parental choice in Kent of all the schools that surround it. But when we did, as the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, as Councillor Harper says, speak to the infrastructure providers, they were really keen that Section 106 does actually tie that in better and actually does provide the infrastructure in a better, more usable form for the things that they need and the actual areas that are mitigated by that specific development. So my worry is that we are switching to Seal, but I think, like you've said, Chair, while we're on the while we're in a dual collecting authority, it's within the rules to do that. But I don't like the reasoning that they haven't spent any of the money, because I think that is a phasing issue in some respects. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, all I was going to say on this one was that we've had a very long debate around the detail of the application. Essentially, this is around the head of terms and so on, which frankly has been negotiated to the point where this is the best we're going to get. So I therefore would just wish to move as per the papers and the urgent update. Thank you.
Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Spooner. Just quickly before we do move on, because the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit extension, obviously there's dual replication within the two Section 106s. Just before we move on, I just would like some clarity on that. The 30-mile-an-hour speed extension is covered in another application and this application. Can I just have clarification on which one it's been? Or is it a pot of money that it's all going to have the scheme come forward?
I can speak on behalf of Greensand Place. There's a requirement under that permission to extend the 30-mile-an-hour limit. There is a pending Section 73, but that's not for this debate under this application.
Sorry, I missed Councillor Summerskill before I went to the foundation. Councillor Summerskill.
Thank you. Just a bit of clarification from the officers. On the original one in 672-73, we mentioned capturing the Sevenoaks approach to make supplementary payments. Yet in this current one under 305, we're talking about the Wednesbury test. Can you explain the Sevenoaks approach and the Wednesbury test and why one trumps the other?
So the Sevenoaks approach is where you would pay a contribution through Section 106, and then if money was awarded through the seal bidding, it would then be refunded to the developer. Rather, it's to avoid double dipping. I'm not familiar with the Wednesbury test off the top of my head to be able to express that to you, but what the key point about that was a reason put forward by the applicant. However, there's only one reason within those 5 points that we're clear on that we would agree with, and that was that last point in the bullet points.
Mr. Timms, I think you can enlighten us on the Wednesbury test.
The Wednesbury test, I don't know, it's from a long time ago. It's just a test of reasonableness for, I think, councils in making decisions. So they're two completely different things. So Wednesbury is just a test of being reasonable in your actions.
And can you just tell me what's the SIL amount that I can multiply 85 houses by on this?
I can't tell you that, but it's not based on 85 houses. It will be based on the market dwellings.
Thank you.
Has it got proposed and a seconder? I shall move to the vote. All in favour? That's 10-4. Those against? Those abstaining? One abstain. That is approved. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Perry and Councillor Reardon, do you wish to take your seats? Okay. I'll just Councillor Perry. Councillor Reardon, any disclosures of lobbying?
No disclosures of lobbying, Chairman. Thank you.
Any general disclosures?
No, thank you.
Councillor Perry, any disclosures of lobbying or any disclosures?
None on both.
It's the same with everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Okay, we then move on to item 13, land south of Ashford Road, Harwich, Kent. I call upon Richard Timms to introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application seeking permission for 42 houses. So this is the location, the site's allocated in the local plan review for housing, and it's on the east edge of Harwich, on the south side of the A20, as you can see here. It adjoins a housing estate to the west. You've got the railway line to the south and the grounds of a house to the east. This is the layout plan, which is in your papers. So access is taken off the A20. This then drops down into the site. And as you can see, housing is only proposed in this part of the allocation here. The allocation extends up here as well. And that's what I refer to as the lower field, and then that follows the sort of extent of development to the west. There's a mix of terrace, semi-detached, detached houses and two-storey apartment blocks. Landscape buffers or edges would be provided on the west, the north, along the north and the east sides. There'd be a small play area in here on the south side. It's just a couple of street scenes. The top one is what would be facing the A20, so the frontage of the site. But this would be lower. It's lower than the A20, and it would be behind existing hedging and vegetation. The bottom section's quite useful to show the level changes from sort of front to back. So on the right, that's the A20 on the right hand side, so it sort of drops down and then rises up to the sort of top field, the top plateau on the left, and no developments proposed up there. Just a couple of photos. So this is where the access will come in. So the A20 is up there. As I say, it drops down. This is roughly where the access is as we come in. That's the east boundary, so the edge of the village or the new edge. You've got the south boundary of this field where the housing is, and the top field is sort of up here behind there. That's from a similar location looking back to, I think it's the Bluebell Walk development. And this is now in the sort of bottom corner. The access is there, so we're looking back across the site. And then finally, this is from the top field. So you can just see the roofs of the Bluebell Walk development there. So you can see that that's sort of raised up. So in terms of some of the key issues, the site's allocated for approximately 53 houses and the proposals are for 42. So the reason for the lower number of houses is because a previous application for 58 houses was dismissed at appeal. This is the layout, which again is in your papers, so this was refused. And it included development on this top field. And that was a key reason for the appeal being dismissed, because that required this road sort of cutting through and rising up the slope. And the inspector felt there were two sort of discordant parcels of development and a lack of coherence. There was also a 3-story apartment block in this top corner, which was judged to be unacceptable. So in our view, this application's overcome that appeal decision, primarily through not proposing houses on the top field. So you just get a coherent layout on the lower part. It aligns with the housing estate next door, and then there's only two-story apartment blocks over here, which is the lower part of the site. So in our view, the development now responds appropriately to the levels of the site, the local context, and importantly has overcome the appeal decision. For these reasons, we're recommending permission. There's an urgent update which amends the SUDS condition and adds another, and there's some additional representations in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Moving to speakers, Mr. Stone.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. In 2011, the census showed about 2,100 residents in Harwich. By 2021, it was around 3,500 residents. Positives, but issues. 3 of the 4 new medium-sized developments, and by that I mean about 50 houses, 50 homes plus in each, interspersed with older housing, stretch all the way up the south side of the A20 from the centre of Harwich all the way up to this point, which you have seen on your maps. This ribbon development brings with issues of urban sprawl, congestion, car dependency, and risk to resident safety. If this application is successful, it will only add to these problems. If you do approve of another medium-sized building plan in Harwich, then there are certainly issues for all residents. The provision of soft infrastructures such as education and healthcare hasn't changed through all of these developments. Just think of the Harwich residents who already cannot get their child into the enlarged yet still full primary school. Think of the single doctor surgery which simply copes with the pressures it has to work with. Hard infrastructures such as the roads and water in, water out have actually deteriorated while the demand has risen. Even with no Brock vehicle driving on the A20, it is not a joyful experience, and it can be unsafe for pedestrians as well as drivers and their passengers. Thinking of the children attempting to cross the A20 on their way to the bus stop in the morning, I just shudder. If approved, then this will be a one-sided decision with Harwich residents continuing to suffer the consequences and over something which they will have no control over. Infrastructures that we all need to live will be further stretched. Please consider when deciding on this application the likely effects on the quality of everyday Harwich lives. More and better infrastructure needs to come before approving any more medium development applications in Harwich. Residents' mental as well as physical needs should have priority over this developer's persistent applications to build on this space.
Mr. Stone, that is the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dean for Harwich Parish Council.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. This site was refused in 2021 and refused on appeal in 2022. Harwich Parish Council was disappointed to find it was included in the local plan and the comments by the appeal inspector have been ignored. We trust that the planning committee has read the reasons for dismissal. Excuse me. Briefly, this grade 1 and 2 agricultural greenfield site with a large urbanisation would be highly visible along the A20. The semi-rural character of this stretch of road between Harwich and Lenham would be significantly compromised, permanently changed and lessen the gap between the two villages. The inspector also noted that further development along the A20 should be resisted and would fail to conserve the field pattern between Lenham and Harwich. More urban development will put further pressure on traffic issues along the A20. This stretch of road is frequently gridlocked from junction 8 of the M20 and is exacerbated when the M20 is closed, with HGVs being diverted through the village. Pollution caused by congestion is a major part of climate concerns, but developers are happy to destroy trees and concrete over green fields which absorb CO2. Planting a few saplings, which take many years to have any impact on net zero, does not mitigate this destruction. Valuable hedgerows on this site have already been destroyed to the detriment of many wildlife species. In 2019, the Court of Appeal rejected a planning application in Newington and ruled that air quality mitigation must now be taken into consideration of any planning application. Much of Harwich is in the Kent National Landscape and is considered a dark sky area. More housing creates more light pollution and should not be ignored. 40% social housing will inevitably increase pressure on public services, schools, and particularly the doctors. Appointment waiting times are measured in weeks rather than days. And we have no guarantee that these dwellings will be for local people and not be sold off in blocks to other boroughs. Recent informal conversations with police have indicated that the design of urban-type estates are a magnet for county line gangs who conduct their business in the narrow streets and alleyways. We have virtually doubled in size in the last 10 years, changing the dynamics of the community and does nothing to deliver social and economic benefits. There is a lack of local employment and residents have to travel to Maidstone or Ashford for entertainment, shopping, as well as work. Past experience shows that in excess of 75% of our residents need a car, well above the national average, and we urge that this application is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. Okay, Mr. Alderman for the applicant.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Yes, this site has a long and detailed planning history, which Mr. Tim's report helpfully summarises. The land was identified by the council as a draft housing allocation as part of the local plan review, and prior to the LPR being formally adopted was the subject of a previous application. As you've just heard, the site is effectively split into two parts, and it's what became known as the lower field and the upper plateau. At the time in 21-22, your officers raised some concerns with the 58 unit scheme, and the application was refused and was the subject of an appeal which was dismissed in 24. The inspector made several observations in relation to the earlier scheme. These again are all helpfully summarised in the report. It was concluded that the principle of a residential development on the land accords with the council's adopted spatial strategy, doesn't lead to any coalescence between Harwich and Lenham. There are no highways or technical concerns or other issues relating to the wider landscape. It was acknowledged that the site had been identified by the council themselves as an appropriate housing allocation. The appeal was ultimately dismissed, predominantly on the basis of harm arising from the transition between the lower section and the upper plateau. In early 24, the LPR and this site was the subject of examination before the plan was formally adopted by the council in May of that year. This crystallised the allocation of the land as a housing development site for approximately 53 units. Detailed pre-application discussions with the council followed, and it was agreed that a scheme which maintained the upper plateau free of built form was the appropriate solution. This allowed development to optimise, not necessarily maximise, unit numbers on site, and resulted in the proposed number of dwellings reduced from 58 to the 42 now proposed. While this is below the housing number foreseen by the allocation, LPR SA 101, it's an appropriate response to the technical and topographical constraints of the land. The revised layout was the subject of very detailed discussions with your officers prior to submission of this application. The comments of Harwich and Parish Council and others are all noted by the applicant. However, your officer's report addresses these comments around land use, the quantum of development, highway concerns, and the general effect on Harwich and the wider area. There are no technical objections to the proposal from KCC in terms of highway implications or from any ecological or other technical policy points of view. The scheme will deliver well-designed and much-needed housing in a range of house types, including affordable housing, delivering new homes on a site which is now formally allocated for such a development within the local plan review. On that basis, I would hope that members are able to ratify your officer's recommendation and grant planning consent subject to the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement as per the terms set out in Mr. Tim's report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Hart was indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite torn on this application because certainly when it was at local plan review, I was very concerned that this was a further eastward creep of ribbon development, which was heading towards closing the strategic gap between Harwich and Lenham. I was also very concerned because the site actually comprises really nice neutral grassland, and that's a kind of priority habitat. So it is a genuine greenfield site in its truest sense. The problem is, of course, that it is allocated. It's in the local plan. I think the appeal decision was really helpful in setting out the landscape importance and the ecological importance of the field on the higher land at the south by the railway. And that really kind of begs a question around, we know that Maidstone Borough Council no longer adopts open space. We don't take land on. Therefore, the land will remain in the ownership of the applicant or whoever succeeds them. I mean, do we have any planning guarantees around a potential for a phase 2, taking in the southern field at some point in the future if there's a change to the National Planning Policy Framework, which, frankly, the change we saw yesterday has significantly relaxed protection for the landscape and biodiversity. So there is a genuine challenge here. That was one thing. The other issue is that we do not currently have detail on the proposed landscaping and on the management. What we've had is where a footpath is going to go around the neutral grass field to the south. But I do wonder whether this is so fundamentally important, what happens to the southern field and the way that the site is maintained and managed, that perhaps the detailed landscaping scheme, the detailed landscape and ecological management plan for the lower field ought to perhaps come to members. And the reason I say that, I think, is drawn out in some of my observations when I was talking about the sustainable drainage scheme, in that I think we have in committee have thought we'd agreed some good schemes in the A20 corridor, but the landscaped areas, the green spaces, have not delivered, I think, on our expectation. And so I think we need to go back to the drawing board a little bit just to ensure that we've got absolutely pinned down how the sites will be managed, how they'll be maintained, and what their form will be. So I think I don't think there's any choice but moving that we grant permission, but I would like that the detailed landscaping and ecological management at the lower field comes back to committee for final sign off. And in moving that, I draw attention to the point around the wet suds, because I don't know if some residents are aware, but there are some real issues with the suds basins in the A20 corridor of being dry and nothing for most of the year, and then suddenly becoming a torrent of water, and it has raised some significant concerns in that area. And I know there was a similar case in Tovel. So therefore I move with that qualification. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Councillor, before we just move on and turn the mic off, could you just clarify the whole landscaping plan for the developed area or the landscaping plan for the?
No, it's for the whole development, because I think the A20 frontage is important as well, because that, frankly, on some of the other developments has not been as good as perhaps we expected.
Councillor, could I just ask a question quickly myself? With the lower field, if we call it the lower field to the hive, the land not developed, has it been offered to any local nature reserve or to the parish prior to this application? Just for the safeguarding matters that Councillor Harwood just
No, not that I'm aware of. For sort of clarity, so the top field is required for the reptile mitigation. That whole field is required for mitigation. There'd be a mown path through it, as you probably know, and then the condition that deals with that, condition 3, is requiring those details. So I think it's that condition that you would want to come back to planning committee, along with the landscaping of that area and the rest of the site. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's required for protected species mitigation. I can't say that, we can never say that's protected forever, but I think that's quite a strong level of protection for that area. But yeah, essentially you want the ecological management mitigation and the landscaping to be, when it's submitted to us, it has to come to planning committee.
Thank you. I must welcome the use of air source heat pumps and PV panels for some of the units, which is on 6.83, which I find useful at last. My question refers to the mention of flooding and the lower area. I know there's a condition 9 where they have to have a sustainable surface water system approved by the local authority, but I'm just concerned that if there's an existing surface water flow path that runs through the site in a westerly direction, are we sure we're protecting Bluebell Walk area to the west from any potential changes in flow there? I noticed that both the parish council and their residents have raised the questions of flooding, or is this the lowest spot in the area? Thank you.
Yeah, so as maybe it's not fully explained there, but so the sustainable drainage scheme is accommodating that flow through the site You've got swales alongside the road, so it would accommodate that. I can't say categorically it will improve the situation. I suspect it will, but I can't factually say that. But it is designed in the SUD scheme, and the applicant, as it says there, did engage with KCC to specifically deal with and accommodate that surface water flow.
Thank you. And can I also ask about connectivity to that Bluebell Walk site? Previous one seemed to have a way through there. This one shows a path, but it shows it hitting a dead end. Is there internal connectivity or not?
There's a fence between the two sides, so we can't require the applicant, they can't remove the fence, but we felt that it was right to run a path there if in the future landowners decide to remove the fence. So you've got it there to plan for the future. But yeah, it may never open up, but we can't control it.
Councillor Harper.
It's a pity on that last one that we can't, as part of this, ask for a gate to be put there, because, you know, this large area of open space is, you know, going to be quite attractive for people living in the area, not just on this estate. And more people can walk between these developments in Harwich, the better, having spent quite a bit of time there recently in the by-election. I think, as is pointed out, the local plan's designated this for housing. We don't have the 5-year housing supply, so we don't have the grounds, I think, to not approve this tonight. One of the things reading this agenda, and it struck me, it's not just this site, but some of the others, is to me, it highlights the difference between going for a nucleated sort of planned settlements, as we were looking at in places like Lidsing and Heathlands, as opposed to piecemeal. You just get one little estate after another, and you get these, you know, sort of cul-de-sac estates. And, you know, we all know the people in Harwich, that's what you end up getting, you know, very little areas, but not an overall approach to an area. So hopefully, obviously, when we look at the local plan for next time round, it's something we can consider. The car parking standards I was looking at, obviously, we use the old Kent County Council standards. So whilst it meets what we have at the moment, I mean, those standards are just not adequate, because, as I think was pointed out by the member from the parish council, the bulk of the population, 75% plus here, have to drive to go to work or whatever. And so in 3 and 4 bedroomed houses, you're going to have 2, 3 cars, let alone in years to come when children grow up. So you're going to immediately, with these planning standards, and I don't know what we can do about it tonight, but perhaps to consider in the future, you build in a problem of car parking in the future. You know, what might be fine now, 5, 10 years down the line, we see the problems that gives us. One thing I do like with this is the open space on page 6, paragraph 6.4, where it shows how much land we're getting. And I understand about the biodiversity net gain, from what Councillor Hard was saying and what's written here. The nature of the land now is such that even with improving hedgerows and trying to maintain as much of the southern field as can be, that the site can't deliver a 20% improvement, and they're going to give money or a deal to do it elsewhere. And that to me really seems a shame, because when you've got a site which the bulk of it is going to be sort of open land, and you can't accommodate an improvement in biodiversity net gain, to me, I was quite shocked to read that. And I suppose my final point perhaps is picking up as something again Tony said, was around public open space. I wonder if perhaps we can request the relevant policy advisory committee and cabinet to reconsider the historic decision of Maidstone Borough not to adopt new areas of public open space, because what we find here is, 2 or 3 acres of effectively public open space going to be maintained by a management company. You go probably 3 developments down, and there's probably another acre of open land being maintained by another management company a bit further down. And so what you don't get is any sort of coordination of all these different sites, especially in Harwich and Lenham, where there's been a lot of sort of development creeping along the A20 corridor. Whereas if either the parish councils or the borough council had management of those pieces of land, it could actually coordinate them. So actually we could improve biodiversity and the ecology and the use of these pieces of land, rather than it all being, each one looked at in its own. So I don't know what the route would be. Do I need to do a member request to get the whole issue looked at again, or is it something we could refer to a committee to look at that issue in public open space, Chair?
To my knowledge, actually, there is no constitution that we can't adopt land. It's advice we normally get given to by officers, not planned officers. The property team within Maidstone normally recommend that we don't take on land for liability. Obviously, if the applicant was offered the land to us, that would be our decision to make as members. And I'm kind of envisioning that the property team would advise against it. Being that that's been their stand to for quite a long time. However, I think the cabinet can make that decision themselves. I don't think you can either ask a question at full council or go through scrutiny. I think there's many things. I don't think we need to refer it here to Councillor Harwood, for example. Paul, just before I just finish off as well. So the reason the B&G can't be done on the site as well is in the report is because the land there is mitigation for the invertebrates there, so that's why I've had to go off site. I would like to just make a slight amendment to the proposal is that with the B&G unit as an informative, that the applicant looks to do them as closely as possible to the site. We can't say exactly where they go because we're not, that's within planning rules, we can't say anymore, but I would like an informative put on there just to say it could be done as closely to the site. Can I start, please? You want to come back?
Yeah, well, I'll probably raise a member request then, but just go either over in scrutiny or a pack or somewhere that we can.
Okay, so we'll take that at the end.
I'll take it offline.
Yeah, we'll take it at the end of the meeting. And I'll come to Councillor Russell after Councillor Perry, who's been waiting patiently. I'll come to you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I do have one concern on this. I mean, I do commend the efforts to improve the layout and everything. I think this is an improvement. But I do have one major concern that the local plan review approved 53, I think, the units, houses. And we're now going to go for 42. And there does seem to be a bit of a trend in going lower than the original local plan review, and it's a 21% reduction, if my maths serve me right, which actually is not insignificant. And I'm just wondering how that can be justified. I know you've explained this in the report, but I just worry that is so much lower than the local plan, which obviously was approved after a lot of discussion and debate. And I'm just wondering how this can be just the reduction of this level can be reduction, because I've seen it in other areas as well that's come to this committee. And we lack a 5-year housing supply, and we're into a tilted balance. And it does seem to be something that's going against that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think one of the reasons for that is one, the B&G, the mitigation for the invertebrates and the slow worms in the area as well, and the advice from the inspector when it got refused. So that's the reasons why behind no development was recommended, but no development on that top field, and they can only fit that amount of houses in the lower field. Okay.
Yeah, but can we really justify it moving so far away from the local plan? Presumably these issues were discussed.
Obviously when the local plan was done, obviously B&G and stuff came in slightly afterwards as well to go with it. So we have to take that into consideration within the NPPF, and things do, as you know, Councillor Perry, you've sat on this committee long enough. The rules do change, and the goalposts do change their size every now and again. And while this site and the previous site, the previous meeting has taken less, there's many other sites that's taken a lot more than the allocation within the local plan as well to go with it. So I'm not saying I agree with you. A trend of this would be would impact on our housing numbers. But that is one of the reasons why the new cabinet has started the local planning process again, to try and clarify some of these issues, and actually so we're not having this all the time. Yeah, Mr. Timms.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason is the dismissed appeal, where the inspector's essentially saying there shouldn't be development on the top field. It doesn't work at this site. But I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of examining an allocation, I think development management process just goes into far more detail than the examination, as the inspector did here. And I think, you know, there is a sort of density policy in the local plan that says, you know, you look at achieving good design that doesn't compromise the character of the area. This is actually a higher density than the plan says for this type of area. And I guess we've got an application next, which is above the numbers in the Lenham neighbour plan. So I think it's just each site is different. And I guess the allocation is an approximate starting point, but I take the point, but we just get into the detail under a planning application.
Okay, Councillor Russell, yeah, second clarification on Councillor Harper's proposal.
Yeah, I was just with brevity going to say, as Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny, that we're a cabinet-led authority, so we can't make decisions. We can only do recommendations. So I would say cut out the middleman and do a member agenda item request to cabinet or raise a question at cabinet. Otherwise, you're just adding another thing. Yeah.
Russell, for that clarification. Councillor Thompson, as a seconder, you actually haven't spoken yet.
I don't have anything to add now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Unless anyone else wishes to speak. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of minor points. I do sympathise with the points made by the objectors, but just a couple of things I picked up on. So page 32, there's a reference to the by the parish council to wheel washing and prevention of construction vehicles on grass verges. I'm assuming that's covered by condition 5 anyway. And then secondly, antisocial behaviour was brought up. I assume officers feel there's no need for a play area management plan because although antisocial behaviour isn't a planning issue as such, those issues are dealt with sort of elsewhere in the report with landscaping and that sort of thing. It's obviously it's an allocated site in the local plan, and the application addresses the appeal decision in that respect anyway, in that development's been removed from the southern end, the layout's coherent and the scale of the buildings has been reduced. The technical consultees haven't raised any objections, and obviously we've got the 5-year land supply issue as well. So I mean, I'm leaning heavily towards supporting the application. It was just a bit of clarification on those minor points.
Yeah, so in terms of sort of wheel washing, no, there are not conditions related to that because it's generally not a planning issue. It's beyond the site. Condition 5 is more to do with construction activities on the site in respect of ecology. Yeah, and then for the play area, yeah, I mean, I'm not aware that we've had sort of management in terms of antisocial behaviour. I guess in a way it's about the design, I guess, and the you know, it's a young children's play area. Obviously, doesn't mean that older children wouldn't hang around, but I guess its position, it's overlooked by those houses. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessary to have sort of an additional management at the play area.
Okay. Okay, so I shall move to the vote. We have a proposer and a seconder. All in favour? Okay. Yeah, just to clarify the conditions for the landscaping committee. So that was unanimous and approved. Thank you. Keeping it local. Moving on to item 14. I call upon the officer Richard Timms to introduce the item for the land off Old Ashford Road, Lenham, Maidstone, Kent.
Yeah, yeah. So this is an application for both outline and full permission, and it was deferred at the September meeting. And I'll just recap exactly what we're considering. So firstly, outline permission with all matters reserved, apart from the access, and that's sought for 100 houses in the housing area here, a sports pavilion and car park in this area, access from Old Ashford Road, and the floating wetland here. So that's all in outline. For the housing, we're deciding if up to 100 houses are acceptable in this part of the site, but we're not considering the detail of the layout, appearance, etc. And that's the same for the pavilion. The full permission part is the green area, and that's a change of use of the farmland to sports pitches. So the application was deferred in September for 4 reasons. The first reason, KCC Ecology have been consulted and they confirm that in excess of 20% B&G can be achieved on site. The second reason, the committee wanted to be confident the sports facilities proposed would be of sufficient quality to replace those that are currently at the William Pitt Field, because the neighbourhood plan allocates the this site for the sports facilities for that reason. So Sport England have been consulted. We held a meeting with them as well, the applicant, and they raised no objections in qualitative terms, subject to conditions, and they relate to an assessment of the ground conditions and measures to ensure the pitches are of quality, in addition to the layout of the pitches, and we've added those conditions to the recommendation. The third reason related to a sort of master plan of the housing area, and I think it was essentially seeking clarity that the development was suitable in its context. So as shown in the report, the illustrative plan has been worked up in more detail by the applicant, and in our view, this now provides enough surety that you can have 100 houses on this part of the site. A new condition is proposed to guide the reserve matters, the layout, and that will secure the development-free areas, the structural landscaping, a maximum density, open space, and the vista towards the Kent Downs. So the fourth and final reason was seeking a more detailed landscaping plan for the sports pitches, which is in your papers and shown here. So that's been provided, and it has strengthened the landscaping on the boundaries and provided more tree planting. So overall, we consider the applicant suitably responded to the deferral reasons with some improvements, and the relevant consultees are raising no objections, so permission is recommended once more. There's an urgent update which amends the SUDS condition and adds another. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Timms. Can I have Councillor Britt for Lenham Parish Council, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. East Lenham Farm is a strategic delivery site 1 in the Lenham Neighbourhood Plan, which you will be aware was made in 2021, July. As well as contributing 100 homes towards the neighbourhood plan, the development on this site will facilitate the creation of new enhanced sports facilities in line with Sport England's strategy towards an active nation, which was the policy in place during the creation of the neighbourhood plan. Currently, just football is provided at William Pitt Field. At the time of creating the neighbourhood plan, the consultation with Sport England set out how the new enhanced provision at East Lenham Farm would meet its criteria. The proposal outlined how the commitment to additional sports provision at East Lenham Farm complied with Sport England's requirements. This, therefore, is the premise under which all of the arrangements have gone forward. The parish's last contact with Sport England noted the arrangements as outlined in the neighbourhood plan, and you can find that set out on page 33 of that document. These are that provided the new facility was in place and functioning before the development of William Pitt Field, which is Strategic Housing Site 6, then it would be deemed to be aligned with Sport England's requirements. As a result, LPC is preparing to scope what additional sports we can include internally within the clubhouse and externally across the wider facility. What is certain, this will be far more than just a replacement football facility. The Parish Council will bring these details forward separately once they have been consulted on and costed. It's also possible that the site might prove a suitable place for EV charging, given that the electrical connections to the clubhouse will need to comply with current regulations. The Parish Council sees this as a destination opportunity for such provision and will investigate the viability of this in due course. Once the new facility at East Lenham Farm is up and functioning, this will release William Pitt Field for an additional 50 dwellings as set out within the neighbourhood plan. Until this is resolved, that site cannot move forward. Therefore, we respectfully request you endorse your officer's recommendation and grant outline permission so that the new homes and the plans for enhanced sport and recreation facilities, as agreed within the plan, can begin to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Britt. For the applicant, Mr. Dean.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members, for the opportunity to address the committee this evening. This application is an allocated housing site, fully compliant with national policy, the Council's recently adopted local plan and the neighbourhood plan. The application before the committee is for 100 houses, family houses, including 40% affordable homes on 3.17 hectares of land. The remaining 10.39 hectares of land within the application site is given over to formal recreation and sports provision, natural and semi-natural areas of informal open space, delivering in excess of 20% biodiversity net gain, nutrient neutrality mitigation, and woodland planting. In response to the request of members at the last planning committee, significant areas of woodland and meadow planting proposed around the sports field have now been increased in area and specified on the newly submitted plan, which will be the subject of a condition in the form of a management plan. KCC Ecology have been consulted on these proposals, raised no objection. Likewise, Sport England has also confirmed their acceptance of these proposals. And as your officer outlined as well, we've also confirmed that the water attenuation facilities will always have water in them so that they don't dry out, and they are there for the benefit of both attenuation and biodiversity purposes. The matter of nutrient neutrality has been agreed with Natural England. All Section 106 requests that have been requested from your officers have been agreed to, and as have the conditions which we find acceptable. We respectfully request at the heads of terms the parameters plan be dealt with as a reserved matter under the usual procedure, please. That's the only change we would ask. This scheme can genuinely be described as one of the most well-endowed proposals in terms of housing development in association with the community sports and recreation provision and the generous areas of green space, all of which enable significant increase in biodiversity. No other allocated site at Lenham in the neighbourhood plan delivers anything comparable to the benefits of this application. The new community sports provision and generous areas of green space far exceed the requirements as set out within the local plan and the neighbourhood plan. Overall, this scheme will be an enduring asset to Lenham and its community, and a place where families aspire to live. Therefore, Chairman, I respectfully request that the committee endorse the officer recommendation and grant outline planning permission for the new homes and sports and recreation facilities that we have planned for Lenham, and we hope that they can now eventually be built. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Harper.
Just in terms of the sports pitches, I was just wondering about what's the lay of the land in that area as to, you know, is it sloping considerably or not? Just to get a feel for sort of what landscaping may be required to create football pitches or any sports pitches. And
yeah, it's generally pretty level, but there will be works required to improve what's grazing land to get it up to standard for football pitches, and those are the conditions that have been added since it was deferred to ensure that those details come in, and we would consult Sport England on the details.
Councillor somebody I'll take you first, and then Councillor Harwood.
Well, it may be what Councillor Harwood's going to bring up, but on the discussion in September, I remember mention of floodlighting being a concern, and Sports England may request floodlighting in this sort of semi-rural area. Was that any aspect followed up, or is floodlighting out of the case here?
Yeah, I mean, floodlighting isn't proposed under the application, and it would require separate planning permission. There isn't floodlighting at William Pitt, so there's no. So if you're doing a qualitative comparison, it doesn't need to provide that. In the future, there may be applications for lighting, and we would decide those when they come in.
Thank you, Chairman. I think taking this in two halves, I think that the residential element is brilliant, and I think it is an exemplar, and as the applicant has said, in terms of layout and the quality of design. I still share some of the same concerns I think that were just aired around the fact that the sports provision field projects out into open countryside in quite a significant way, and if at some point in the future it is determined that there will be an upgrade to a kind of 3G, 4G pitch and floodlighting, it will be a very rural location for that sort of technology. However, that is not what's on the papers, and as is pointed out, you know, there's no permitted development rights that will need to come back for permission, and that will be judged on its merits. I do wonder about the layout, whether the layout of the pitches is just illustrating how many pitches can be fitted in, because it seems to me you'd be getting the ball out of the stream a lot on what's currently proposed, and if you kind of took a run up for a corner on the top pitch, you'd probably get wet as well. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I do think they are slightly indicative for and not scaled, but I do take your point, Councillor Harwood. I also was going to, you said, I think the layout, for the indicative layout, is a really nice layout. However, I'm aware that we've approved applications on indicative layouts before, so I would like us to note considerable weight to that indicative layout and the avenue of trees that come through the site, so that if when the applicant does put a detailed plan in, that is noted that is one of the reasons why we did approve it here tonight. Okay, so I'm happy to move that from the chair. Do you have a second? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some comment to follow up the remarks that have been made already about these plans being indicative. Although I would like to note the very carefully phrased and nuanced messages of support from the two speakers that came forward from the applicant and from the parish council. There were a number of lessons offered here that I would certainly like to say that I was listening and took note of, and they have further implications. Where are people going to travel from to go to these sports pitches? And if they were to arrive on 4 wheels rather than 2, or indeed on 2 legs, where might they leave their vehicles? There's it seems to me there's a very large demand being created, and perhaps a question needs to be asked about where the users from other than the nearby estate are going to park.
There is going to be a car park at the clubhouse. Hence I think with the applicant, the parish council said about the EV chargers is one of the reasons that they're going to probably
seems to be rather small.
That's noted. Thank you. So as this is, Councillor Thompson, as this is an indicative plan, obviously those details will come forward and we will have a chance to comment on them when they come forward to this committee. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? And that's it, I shall go to the vote. All in favour? Unanimous. That is approved. Thank you. I'm aware we've been going a little bit and there is no water due to the lift issues. Does anyone want to take a 5-minute break or have to continue? No, we'll continue then. Okay. Item 12. We do have no speakers on this item. So I'm happy to take it. Do you wish it to? Okay. Okay, in that case, I call upon Kate Terry to introduce the item. The barn at Wilton Farm, Wilton Hill Farm, Portman, Chelsea.
Thank you, Chairman. Just waiting for the screen to catch up. Just go anyway. Just relax. So the application site relates to a parcel of land that is currently occupied by a lawful dwelling and an agricultural barn. The development would see the demolition of these buildings and these then effectively being replaced by a detached self-built dwelling. The application is being reported to committee as it's considered to be a departure from the local plan. To emphasise again, there is a lawful dwelling on the site and the existing barn has extant prior approval to be converted to a dwelling. As such, there is a reasonable fallback position of having the potential for 2 dwellings on the site, and whilst the application site is considered to be removed from basic amenities and services for day-to-day living, it is considered that the reduction in the number of potential dwellings on the site from 2 to 1 would create a more sustainable development. It is also considered that the development would not cause significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. The scheme is deemed acceptable in all other material planning respects. Some weight is given to the development being a self-build project, and it remains that the council is unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. On this basis, a recommendation of approval is made, subject to the conditions. It's just a quick run through of the proposed layout. These are the elevations. It's the south elevation that would be seen from the south, obviously. And just to go through some of the pictures. This is Peen's Lane to the south, where there will be a sort of distant view. As you again south, this is the agricultural barn there. That's the only apparent view from the south from Weirton Hill. As you go to the top of Weirton Hill, looking sort of southwest. The proposal is sort of tucked in behind these trees here. Getting a bit closer to the site, this is the public right of way. Again, the established trees here largely screen the view. Looking south along Weirton Hill to the access of the site about here. This is within the site, looking back towards Weirton Hill. Looking across the site from the west, this is the agricultural barn. The eco house is sort of tucked behind. And then you're looking from the access from Weirton Hill back towards the site. And again, the barn is sort of tucked away behind the trees.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Summersgill and Councillor Cleater.
Thank you. As the papers say, this is a new dwelling in the countryside for which there's no local plan review policy under policy LPRSP 9. Bolton Monchessley Parish Council have related 4 policies from the local plan and 3 of their own neighbourhood plan, and they have a very comprehensive neighbourhood plan. So they've objected and pointed out these policies of the national plan. And my concern here relates to 2 months ago, we looked at a similar building in the countryside, supposedly off Dean Street, Pleasant Valley, where somebody had two buildings. They wanted to put a bungalow up about the same size. This is larger than that. This is really in the countryside. The one we rejected 2 months ago was next to 11 more houses and hardly deemed to be in the countryside and with a footpath alongside. I just can't see the consistency in treatment between various. If it's in the countryside and we deem it unnecessary in the countryside, then that's purely the point that's raised here.
You want to come back on the items?
So it is a departure and considered to be a new dwelling, but as we all know, it's sort of case by case based on own merits. There is an agricultural barn on the site already that has a Class Q permission to be converted to a dwelling. The new dwelling itself, whilst marginally larger, does not sit significantly taller. It is considered to be a more attractive building than the agricultural barn, and the fact that the permission, if this was approved, would then create 1 dwelling on the site rather than the potential for the 2 dwellings on the site.
I hope that clarifies some of that for you, Councillor Summersgill. Councillor Cleater.
Well, I'm not seeing any objections from anyone in Bolton Monchelsea. So it's removal of a barn, it's fairly hidden, it's right next to another building. So I move we approve it. I mean, the local people will be up in arms if they, so as the officer has just said, it's on a case by case basis. And she's explained herself very well for me, so I move that we approve it.
Thank you, Councillor Cleater. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, okay. If anyone doesn't else want to speak on it, we'll go to the vote. Oh, sorry, Councillor Spooner and Councillor Perry.
Just very quickly, Mr. Chairman, seems to me the critical issue here is if we approve this, we have 1 house in the countryside. If we don't, we potentially have 2. And that means 2 lots of what I would call residential paraphernalia, greenhouses and summer houses and exercise yards and tennis courts and swimming pools. But in this, but if we approve this, we end up with 1, and it will be strictly controlled by conditions, and we won't end up with 2. And that, I think, is the determining issue. Thank you.
I would agree with you there, Councillor Spooner. I do believe it's an improvement on the area as well. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I struggle with this for exactly the same reason. I mean, Councillor Summersgill said, we seem to, when we had the one, I think it was in East Farley, wasn't it? And I wanted to support it. I was almost considered to be sort of committing some crime against the policies of the local plan. And here we go again, but something, it's the same, it seems to me. Yeah, oh, it's all okay now. Well, I don't think it is. Either we have policies or we don't. It's all we're all saying on a case-by-case basis, but the policies don't change. They're there, and we ought to follow them. Now, either we do or we don't. I don't mind, but I would like a little bit of consistency on this, and I don't think we've got it, quite frankly, on this particular issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Perry. Just a bit of clarification there. The one in East Farley was a new dwelling, a brand new dwelling in the countryside. This takes 2 dwellings and combines them into 1 dwelling. So it's not a new dwelling. So it's not apples for apples, as to say. So it's not exactly the same to go with it. I don't think so, neither did the planning officers to go with it. You may disagree, Councillor Summersgill, which I guess you will, and you, Councillor Perry. I'll let you come back, on.
Because if I recall it, I haven't got the papers in front of me, but it was to do with a substantial harm to the countryside, I remember, and that one was refused. I can't see the difference. I don't care whether it's two buildings into one or whatever it is. It seems to me that it's the same issue, and we seem to be accepting one and not the other. I just want consistency on this because I don't think we're getting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I will clarify again. That's a new dwelling. This is an existing dwelling. Okay. Okay. Right. I've got a proposer. I've got a seconder. All in favour? (10-4). Those against? 3 against. Yep. Any abstentions? No. That is approved. Thank you, councillors. Moving on then. Land, item 18, land on site former 51 London Road. I call upon Will Fletcher to introduce the item. Will.
Right, thank you. So the application tonight is at 51 London Road, which is just south of Bower Mount Road. And it seeks the erection of a 4-storey apartment building containing 14 two-bedroom dwellings, including 4 affordable units. So this was deferred at the August committee. So just to remind members, here's the site. In 2009, there was an office building which has been demolished. The site has now become completely overgrown. This is the neighbouring property number 49. That's a key consideration. The site is overgrown with substantial vegetation. So it was deferred for us to investigate the possibility of a more sympathetic design, look into more detail at landscaping and B&G on site, and seek a parking stress survey and to request details of how refuse and deliveries will be managed to the property. So starting with the design, we have discussed this proposal with our conservation officers who have made suggestions. We have the previous proposal on the right, and now on the left, the applicant has taken the suggestions on board. We now have a more higher quality design, more higher quality detailing and materials, especially on the front elevation. We have amended the description since the publication of the agenda to include the design, the detailing. So these are now going to be sort of locked in. They will be harder to revert back to the previous, what was submitted with the app initially submitted. So here we have the side elevation proposed at the top. At the bottom is the appeal decision, what was dismissed on amenity grounds. So the inspector did refer to the extent of glazing. This has now been reduced, and some of the glazing has been recessed and angled away from number 49. In addition, the applicant has now relocated the building to just over 10 metres from number 49 to the south, so it's up from 8.7 metres when the proposal was initially submitted. So moving on to ecological issues, there is a discrepancy within a street scene elevation between the distance on the block plan and the street scene elevation. The agent is addressing this, so I will request delegated authority to amend condition 2 and condition 3 as necessary, just to make sure we have the right plans when we approve this. So moving on to ecological issues, the submitted arboricultural report confirms that the resiting of the building will have no adverse impacts on the root protection areas of the boundary trees. The inspectorate did not object to the proposal on the basis of loss of any landscaping, and this does carry significant weight in assessing the current scheme. So new landscaping is proposed around the extent of the building and the site in general. No outright objections have been received from NBC tree officers. Conditions will be imposed requiring the development to be carried out in accordance with tree protection measures. In response to comments from the planning committee, the applicant has reassessed the biodiversity net gain and submitted updated B&G information. Revised information now includes on-site landscaping of modified grassland and introduced scrub, which reflects the proposed plans. Native hedgerow is also now proposed. Off-site provision will be required to meet BNG requirements. The applicant has indicated they are in contact with Adonis Blue environmental consultants who have provided confirmation that there is availability for the types and conditions of habitats that are required. The registered sites are an acceptable method of achieving the 20% BNG. So it is concluded that the applicant has followed the BNG hierarchy and that all reasonable efforts have been made to secure the 20% BNG on site, with some provided off site. This is in accordance with the local plan policy SP 14. Details of off-site provision will be secured by a legal agreement. So moving on to highways, just to go over this quickly, the applicant has removed all on-site parking after highways consultees raised an issue with the safety of the access. This is due to the proximity of the pedestrian crossing here. So this has been done with the support of highways consultees on the basis that this is a broadly sustainable location, but the development does not comply with any adopted parking standards. Again, highways consultees, they haven't objected to this. Details of the requested parking stress survey, vehicle movements, and a car sharing scheme are within the third report. It is concluded that there is sufficient local on-street car parking capacity to accommodate the parking demand from the proposed development. The highways impact, even under the worst case scenario, does not meet the severe test, which would necessitate refusal. Highways consultees who supported the scheme prior to the submission of the parking stress survey haven't changed their position. So to conclude, whilst this was made under the previous local plan, we have a site with a recent appeal decision, which was dismissed solely on the basis of the building's impact to number 49 to the south. Following the alterations to the scheme and the submission of the daylight survey, sunlight assessment, this has been addressed. The new issues since the appeal decision are the BNG and the highways matters, and these have now been addressed. The applicant has, at your request, has worked with us to improve the appearance of the building. The inspector has concluded that a building of this scale and appearance is acceptable in this location. So the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing supply. Development seeks to provide 14 new dwellings, including 4 affordable homes on a site with no ecological or landscape protections in a broadly sustainable location where development is encouraged. So on this basis, we're recommending approval as per the papers.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, Mr. Bevan for the objector.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The current application is for a 4-storey apartment building. The window-to-window distance as done by 49 London Road has been increased to 10.3 metres. This is still far too close for a 4-storey apartment building overlooking, importantly, looking down onto a 2-storey Victorian house, which is basically like looking into a goldfish bowl. As already been said, the previous application was refused by the planning committee, with a subsequent appeal dismissed by the planning inspectorate, basically because of the effects of number 49 London Road. I think my understanding is it's been moved by about 1.5 metres from that point to increase the window-window distance, which is basically very little. A further invasion of privacy is the ends of the exterior balconies will look straight into the rooms and garden of 49 London Road, and the rear exterior balconies will look directly into the rear windows and rooms of 21, 22 and 23 Whitchurch Close. This has been objected to on many occasions but appears to be ignored. Juliet balconies would be a far better option. The proposed car-free development will turn surrounding roads into car parks at weekends. Whitchurch Close, which is where I live, is already suffering from vehicles being dumped over entire weekends when no parking restrictions are in force. With the move to electric vehicles being encouraged, how would the residents of the proposed development charge their vehicles? I note the parking survey that's been carried out was on a Tuesday and Wednesday, not at a weekend. And as I repeat, weekend, there are no parking restrictions in force. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have Mr. White for the applicant.
Good evening, members. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application on behalf of the applicants. We're pleased that officers remain supportive of the proposal for the reasons justified in the updated committee report before you this evening. The application was previously presented at the August Planning Committee and was deferred as members requested amendments to the proposed development and the submission of further information. The applicant has directly responded to each of these requests, and the officer's report confirms that the scheme remains acceptable following these amendments. Members previously raised concerns about the proposed design and siting of the building. In consultation with the Council's Conservation Officer, the design of the building has been amended to better reflect the setting of the site and the character of this part of London Road. Additionally, the siting of the building has been further adjusted to increase the separation distance to number 49 London Road. The proposed building now has a separation distance of 10.3 metres from number 49, an increase of 1.6 metres from previously. Members also requested further consideration of the potential to maximise the delivery of BNG on site. An updated BNG assessment of the site has been undertaken, and further on-site landscaping is now proposed. The remaining BNG percentage will be delivered off-site to achieve the required 20% net gain, and the applicant has engaged with BNG credit providers to confirm that there is availability within the borough. As set out in the officer's report, KCC Ecology have confirmed that the BNG hierarchy has been followed, and officers have concluded that all reasonable efforts have been made to secure BNG for the development. Further details on the parking impact of the development have also been provided in the form of a parking stress survey, which confirms that there is sufficient on-street parking in the area to accommodate the anticipated demand of the proposed development. KCC Highways have confirmed that they remain supportive of the proposed development. It is clear that the applicant has taken all reasonable steps to respond to members' previous requests, and this is confirmed by the officers maintaining their recommendation that the application be approved. The site is in a highly sustainable location close to the town centre. The proposals make efficient and effective use of previously developed land, helping to direct growth away from less sustainable edge of settlement and greenfield sites, and their development will deliver new market and affordable housing. In these circumstances, this is an application that should be supported, and we respectfully encourage members to approve the proposal in accordance with officers' recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. Councillor Jeffries, a ward member.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, it's good to see that the applicant has made some changes to the plans. They're clearly, it's good that we're being listened to, which is nice. The officer described the site as completely overgrown. I've written rewilded. It is really quite a wild area, and it would be a shame to lose that rewilding. I note that the BNG is going to be mostly off-site. Again, that is, as we said back in the summer, that is problematic, but I can't see any other option other than, given the rewilded nature of the site, any other option to go with off-site BNG. The overlooking aspects, clearly better than they were 2 years ago when it last came through, but still slightly concerning for number 49. And yes, I quite like the improvements to the front elevation. It does now look a bit Art Deco. However, that side of the road from Queensgate on the corner of Queens Road right down to Terrace Row is a Victorian looking stretch. It's full of Victorian houses. Queensgate is modern, but it is Victorian in its look. So we are putting a okay, by 50 years, Victorian to Deco building in the middle of a stretch that has got a lot of listed buildings. It is quite an impressive street scene. And yes, I do accept that opposite that it's mostly flats, some of them sort of 60s blocks, but the two sides of the road are very different. I think the parking concerns raised by the residents are important. Most of the buildings around there do have off-street parking. This won't have any, and therefore is going to cause significant addition to the area. So I maintain an open mind, and I'm keen to hear others' views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harper, and I've got Harwood, then Councillor Russell, then Councillor Gleeser.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this property is also adjacent to my ward as well, and it almost got incorporated into the Greater Fant when we were doing the boundary review. But it's funny, isn't it? Because I think the officer said the original building on the site was demolished in about 2009. So my recollection of this site has always been empty, and it's been like the one green gap along that whole part of London Road. And unfortunately, obviously, you know, it can't remain as that, but that would have been my preference, because the biodiversity and the ecology value of these types of sites is incredibly high. I mean, they can offer in an urban area some of the best biodiversity you're going to get once the sites become rewilded over such a long period of time. But anyway, looking at the plan or the elevations on paragraph 4.07, and I've heard what the officer said, and obviously I wasn't at the previous meetings, but I must admit my preference would have been for the original elevation compared to the amended one. I suppose my concern is on having all these bars on your windows, is it just reduces the amounts of light coming into your flats, whereas the clear, if you like, the less obstruction and the more clear glass you've got coming in pulls in a lot more light. But you know, we are with the current application. My main concern, or my two main concerns, I say, biodiversity and parking. To be proposing a brand new development with no parking, I think is awful. I think I only have to think of all the problems we have in this area of Bridge and then adjoining it onto Fant and Oakwood of developments with no parking. It just is compounding problems. And I notice, as the resident pointed out, when we look at paragraph 419, the parking stress survey results, they were carried out. Admittedly, at the start, the schools would have been back when they were done, but they were done on a Tuesday night and then on a Wednesday night. I wonder if it would have been interesting if one day had been in the middle of the week and one at a weekend to see whether that led to any significant differences. Because if people are not at home on one of those nights, they might have been away. They're going to be probably away the following night, which is why the numbers are almost identical. But also near all those streets, I mean, you've got Bowermount Road, which is on the same side of the road as these flats, but virtually all those other streets are on, if you look at the covering map we've got on page 216, it's on that small estate opposite. So they're on the other side of one of the busiest roads in the borough. So we're asking the people to park their cars over there, quite reasonable way from where they're living, and then having to cross one of the town's busiest roads. To me, that's not particularly great. And we know that over time, there's more and more cars coming, and I just personally can't see how we should be approving something with no on-site parking provision when it's a large enough site. If you went for slightly lower number of units, there are ways you could have accommodated some on-street parking. And then we have the biodiversity issue. Well, I don't know, perhaps if we're obviously going to have to relocate the biodiversity net gain because there's no space here to do it, and given what we're losing. But I would just ask perhaps if we could add, I don't know, either in your informatives or your conditions, that the biodiversity net gain off-site provision is maintained in either Allington and Bridgewald or in Fant and Oakwood Ward. So it's maintained in the areas immediately adjoining this site. And I think of two immediately: Buckland Hill Nature Reserve, which is Actually, I think that's pretty well on the map almost you've got, and Cornwallis Park, which is just off the very bottom of this map. So there are two council sites which could easily benefit from a bit of this money or credits to improve their biodiversity and be close enough that the residents living in these flats could actually go and enjoy those areas where they're the nearest open spaces to them. Yeah, I've got quite a lot of concerns, but I get a bit like Stuart. I'm willing to listen to what other people have got to, if they can persuade me to support it.
Okay, I just want to address on the B&G credits. Those sites aren't registered for B&G credits, and as part of the process and the hierarchy, they have to go to B&G credits. So we can put an informative on to be as close as possible, like we did on the previous one, but we can't tell the applicant where to go. We have had a discussion about Maidstone actually registering sites for B&G credits. There is a cost behind doing that. But again, we can't tell the applicant to use this one. It's not like it was when before you say put your nature reserve there and improve that, or the section 106, you can improve this nature reserve because people are going to walk around it, etc. It's changed slightly, and within those rules, unfortunately, we are a bit limited. I hope it covers some of that, Paul. Councillor Harwood, and then Councillor Russell, and then Cleater.
Yeah, thank you. I think the point is well made on B&G credits, because they are traded and they need to be sites which are registered and are offering them. The only sites I'm aware of in Maidstone Borough are privately owned, and most of them are in the Kent Downs National Landscape, actually, many in the kind of Lenham area. And that's the way it will work. There is a way, of course, of ensuring there is some contribution to existing green spaces in the area, albeit they semi-natural ones, and that's through section 106. If we feel that this site is not delivering either semi-natural open space, nor is it delivering formal open space, and potentially that funding could be earmarked for some of the green spaces that Councillor Harper mentioned. Just coming back kind of procedurally to where we are, there's been a kind of opening up of discussion around the parking issue again. You know, the application was deferred for clear reasons, and the applicant has responded to those reasons for deferral. So it's difficult for us to kind of reopen those other areas of debate. And of course, we cannot defer again. You know, this is our final one. I think the point that I think has been made by both the previous speakers is a really good one about this stretch of London Road and how the west side of the road has shades of the A264 Pembury Road as you go into Tunbridge Wells. It's very leafy sites with some very nice villas on them. Frankly, the east side of the road is best not mentioned in many ways, which is, you know, many kind of 1960s blocks. And I think what the applicant has done here in terms of the elevations, and on page 219, we've got the drawing there, is essentially, I think, the original elevation fits very much with the east side of the road. I think, yeah, there has been an attempt with the new elevations, and it, you know, and it I think it's unarguable that it is better design and is more in keeping, but it is still a very intensive design that fills its plot. You are still losing essentially a woodland, which is on that site, which backs on to a residential cul-de-sac of kind of more modern estate houses, and it's going to be a real change for those residents who are going to lose their kind of woodland setting and get an apartment block. But I do not feel there is anywhere further for us to go. So therefore, I will move that we grant permission as per the papers. But I do wonder whether we should have a delegated ability for the officers to discuss the issue around the off-site allocation of section 106 for green space, because we are losing effectively a rewilded woodland. We need compensation that's pretty much like for like, and therefore potentially some investment in some of those semi-natural sites that Councillor Harper has raised should be considered in terms of a sequential hierarchy.
I don't think there's anything against us exploring that under these delegated powers. Yeah, that's fine. So, okay. You happy to second that, Councillor Harper, or you still want to? I'll second it. It's like we go. I'm all right to speak. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I haven't seen this application previously, so to me, I don't think it looks that different, if I'm being honest. They've just changed a few of the windows about, but it's not any, it doesn't look any particularly smaller. There's some fake windows in the middle now. To me, it just really looks the same. But my question was, I've just Googled Earthed 49 London Road, and that is like a 2-story with a tiny little window, like big house dwelling. And when I'm looking at page 230, that was the recent appeal decision, wasn't it, with the following conclusion: the proposed development would not be harmful to character, blah, 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 blah. However, there would be significant harm to the living conditions of the occupiers of 49 London Road. As such, the proposal conflicts with the development plan taken as a whole. And we're always told we have to look at what the appeal says. So that's what he said. And we're pulling it back 1.6 metres. Does 1.6 metres mean that that doesn't apply, or have I got that wrong?
No, they are pulling it back, and 1.6 metres to the 10 point. That will come with it.
Yeah,
but also, I would just say as well, they have changed. It's not shown in that picture, but in the actual planning and the plan papers, the windows don't look directly there. Those weird angled ones now, so they won't look directly on that side elevation onto that house. I think we've got that. But could you just clarify the
Probably would have been
distance,
helpful to
please,
see
Will?
that. Yeah, that hasn't got the house in it though.
So yeah, the distance has increased by,
1.6 metres.
it's gone from 8.7 metres to 10.3 metres
That
now.
could
I
be
mean, the
better.
main change is,
1.6 metres.
if you check page 236, that has the list of what the inspectorate noted during the appeal decision, and then what the applicant has done to address this. The main change. So the inspector focuses quite a bit on the extent of fenestration that's on the southeast elevation. So we've got this middle block of fenestration, which is being reduced in its size. The fourth floor has been cut away, and the windows here have been recessed in and angled so they don't look out directly onto number 49. And there's just been an overall reduction in the extent of fenestration. The applicant has submitted a daylight and sunlight assessment, which confirms that. It's a bit of a technical, but it does confirm that the impact's acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Will. So, yes, I think what Will's saying is that what the inspector brought up there, that change now actually mitigates that issue and it moving back. Councillor Russell. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, I mean, for the side of the road areas, the design is totally not in keeping. I'm struggling to see Art Deco, by the way, but there you go. And whoever's doing the highways reports on parking is living in cloud cuckoo land, because I used to have to visit people in that area, and you could never get parking. And public transport is okay if you're going in one or two directions. If you're going anywhere else, so, you know, if you want to get the 71, that's fine. If you are good walking up and down hills, then you can get to Maidstone West. But the reality is, doesn't matter who you are, public transport is so bad. And I'm really that KCC encourages car-free developments. Good, get on and sort the buses out then, or, you know, work to get some public transport, because the reality is, unless you're working in town, you need a car to get where you need to, unless you're going to Snodland that way, or if you're going to the hospital. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think it's in keeping with the area. I don't think it doesn't even meet Art Deco that I recognise as Art Deco. You can do it, and other developers have done it, which is along the 229, the Royal Engineers Way, where the site of the old mill. Those are new houses, but were designed in ways that were compatible to what used to be there and what is opposite. So, yeah, it's a carbuncle.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleaver. I will say, as we defer this item, and when we do defer items, if members do feel, for example, you want that to look a bit more Victorian, you need to mention that in the deferral, because that will then guide the applicant to change that to look like that. That wasn't mentioned at all at the previous application, that we wanted it to look more Victorian. When we did, no, we didn't. When we deferred it, we didn't say it's look a bit more Victorian. So we need to be, all of us as a committee, I'm partly to blame for that, Councillor Cleaver. We need to be clearer, and I think with the parking as well, when we ask for parking surveys, we say one midweek, one at the weekend. Which, well, there is a saying about assuming, isn't there? And I won't repeat it, but there we go. Before you, no, Councillor Jeffries, Councillor Thompson before you. No, you've got Councillor Thompson before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I read very with keen interest the contrast between paragraph 7.07 and 7.08 in the original application and conditions 3 and 4 in the current example. I do have to say that I feel that the single sentence that I uttered for in cause of asking for the conservation heritage assessments to be made, I have to say I do feel listened to. I realise that we can't please all of the people all the time. I realise that we've passed from a 2009 demolition to something of a swan song for a secret garden on the London Road. Well, we wish. It is a brownfield development. I think that that the applicant has made considerable steps towards making something which meets many of the wishes that we expressed. I welcome it and would like to confirm that I do indeed feel that this committee has made a substantial difference, and I feel that my time has been well used. Thank you.
Thompson, thank you for your patience and get around here. Councillor Jeffries.
Can I just check? I think you said that when we discussed this in the summer, that the heritage aspects weren't part of the deferral. They absolutely were. 4.01 confirms that, and I was very clear about the long stretch of Victorian villas along that side of the road.
Reading that again, I can see we can read that as because we were here, but we need to clarify. I think we just need to be clearer, better on what we're asking people to come back with. So with the Victorian stuff, I know you said about the heritage, looking at the heritage, and again, like Councillor Cleaver has said, you assume they're going to look at the rest of the street and take that view, Councillor Jeffries, and I would agree with you. However, sometimes we need to be a bit more, I think we need to be a bit more, please go do this and look at from this kind of thing to help the applicant come to what we're trying to get or what we want, shall we say. But you know, you may disagree, but I think we just need to be a bit more clearer sometimes on some of what we're asking for. The officer just also wanted to say with the parking surveys, we do use the national standard, and unfortunately, the national standard is midweek. So again, that's probably something that we need to look at within our own parking survey guidance as well to go with it. So I'll discuss that with the cabinet member at our meetings. Okay. Anybody else want to talk on this? No? Okay, I've got a proposer, got a seconder. All in favour? Oh, and include them the informative about what Councillor Harper mentioned. Yeah. It's 8-4. Those against? 5 against. Those abstaining? Okay. That's approved. Okay. So the next item has no speakers, but as we did defer it, I'm guessing members do want this brought back. Okay. Right. So I call upon Will Fletcher to introduce the item for the land rear 4 Oaks, Churchill Road, Bournemouth, GRC Kent.
Thank you. This is at the land rear of 4 Oaks. It's along Church Hill at Bournemouth, Chelsea. The application proposed to change the use of the land to provide an additional 4 gypsy and traveller pitches. This was deferred at the April committee to investigate amenity issues on site, which is addressed in a deferred report, and to investigate development at the rear of the site. At the time, we have this Google Earth photo here from 2024, which shows that there's a tarp with what appears to be perhaps some Taurus underneath it. We now have a drone photo from earlier in the year, which shows that this is being removed. The plans do show that this area will not be developed. There is a 15-metre buffer between the site and the woodland. This is achievable. Amended one of the landscaping condition to make sure that this is referred to in the submitted landscaping scheme. As such, recommending approval as per the papers.
Thank you, Will. Who's the closest member to this? Well, probably me or Mike, really. Yeah. So, does anyone have any comments on this? Obviously, one of the main reasons why we deferred it was that bit towards the rear. No? Go on, Councillor Harper.
Obviously, I've not been involved with these in the past, but is it because it's mobile homes as opposed to touring caravans that we don't have to provide, like the accommodation block? That's just a question, really, because there's no sort of, so as I can say, there's no accommodation blocks in conjunction with the one touring caravan. I thought normally we ask for, those sort of accommodation blocks which have toilets, bathrooms, and kitchens to go with touring caravans. I could be completely wrong. Sorry, yeah, thank you, David.
No, I don't think there is a requirement to have a day room on site. There'll be further development of the site if they were to put that forward.
Councillor Cleaver, and apologies for not coming to you first, since you indicated
You're
I
in the dark house. You're in the dark house. Just that, as it's from Mr. Leotika, it's the continuation of a retrospective planning application, because the day he puts one in advance of doing what he does, I'll probably drop dead of a heart attack.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleaver. That is noted. So, on that note, my recommendation from the chair. Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Harwood. All in favour? 12 for. Those against? Abstaining? 1 abstaining. Okay, thank you, councillors. Right, moving on, last item. Move on to the appeals. Called upon Tony Ryan. Go through the appeals list, please.
Yeah, just wanted to highlight the third case, which was the allowed one at the lodge. Inspector disagreed with officers that the proposal was acceptable in terms of character and appearance and impact on heritage assets. It's not noted here, but the applicant also applied for costs, and that cost application was dismissed. I think we need to kind of include those in the papers as well, in terms of whether they are allowed or not, because I think they are relevant to the kind of process. The only other point I would make is in terms of that went to members. They appealed against non-determination. It is a slightly unusual situation in that the inspectorate did actually found the appeal invalid, and that was due to buildings overhanging the site boundary. So that doesn't happen that often. So that's kind of an unusual one. Thank you.
Let's go. Oh, no, Councillor Cleater.
Just a point of clarification on, you made a comment about costs. Did you say that they applied for costs off us? And have we returned the favour, and are we getting our costs reimbursed? Because, you know, people are quite happy to claim costs off us, but if they've appealed, then they should pay our costs then, if they've been cheeky enough to ask us to pay theirs. Quid pro quo.
Yes, I think the council can apply for costs. I think it is 90% of the time it is applicants applying for costs against the council. But yeah, the council does apply for costs, but there's set criteria in terms of what is unreasonable, and the council has to demonstrate that the applicant has been unreasonable in terms of their action, in terms of putting in the appeal. Yeah.
Okay. That third decision, I was asked by a constituent in my parish about this, because they've been on the planning committee, asked for advice, and I felt he had a case, so I encouraged him to follow the national guidance and Mason Borough Council guidance, and ask for a discussion with the planning officers, which apparently didn't happen, which is why he appealed late. So I think maybe senior officers should look back at some of the sequences there on that particular application, because although I'm new to this, I'm not new to looking at documentation that specifies what you should do, and not responding to the applicant was probably part of the cause behind it. I won't go into any more detail on that. I would also like to ask, on this invalid one, does that mean it comes back again? The fourth card, the one that the inspector said is invalid, is that the end of the thing on that, or does it come back again?
My understanding is that they would need to reapply again and go through the whole process again. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I note members' enthusiasm to wrap up, and also members' attention to detail and due diligence and so forth. We are all trying to do our best, and my simple request is that please could officers think of adding perhaps an extra line of explanation in the appeal cases. What we've learnt in the conversation with Councillor Perry and Councillor Spooner and Councillor Summersgill is we are applying so much of our general understanding, in fact, on a case-by-case basis. I feel very much an amateur in this whole process, and perhaps that will never change. Having the assistance to understand why decisions were made at each stage in the process, to be able to build that broader knowledge is noted. We can all hear that people are paying attention to doing that, so we will read it and pay attention. So it would be nice to hear a little bit more so that we understand before we sit down why these decisions are made, and indeed, as this conversation has just demonstrated, what the knock-on effects of them might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Well, we'll advise members as well. You can approach justices before this planning committee if there's something within the report that you. Pardon? Yeah, on cabinet. Yeah. No, yeah, but I was talking about the reports as such. But yeah, and you can approach the cabinet. Thank you, Councillor Russell, for that, about certain items as well. Appreciate your time tonight, councillors. I know some of you had a bit of a journey to get in. That road was terrible today as well to go with it. Wish you a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year. Take care.